Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're very excited to be presenting this program with you tonight. SAGEvets, the National Association of Black Military Women, and the New York State Division of Veterans Services is presenting Voices from the Black Women Veteran Community. This is a special Women's History Month virtual event, and we've been putting this together for some time. But before we begin, let me just address a couple of housekeeping issues. First, I had to mute everybody's microphone just because of background noise. So please check your mics before you talk, especially presenters. We are expecting a large group tonight. It's already forming up pretty nicely. So that's why we've got to keep the mics muted. So you'll find that it is muted once you log on, but just unmute whenever it comes time to offer a question in the dialogue section of tonight's program. Of course, feel free to pop questions in the chat throughout the evening. And lastly, let me just let you know that this program will be recorded. The chat will be part of that recording. So if you do not wish to be part of that, please turn off your camera and censor your comments because they will be archived. And we've got a really amazing program tonight. Really happy to have put this together. We actually started to plan this last year, the three groups together, the three agencies, and of course, COVID happened right when we were planning to present this program. So we were determined to make it happen. We circled back, we adjusted to make things a little bit more relevant to today because 2021 is a little different. As we have all experienced. So tonight we're going to talk about some new bills and resolutions that have been introduced in Congress, and they're all aimed to provide services to and honor women veterans. And also on the agenda tonight is the military's recent end to the transgender ban and so much more. And who could forget, we've got a grand raffle at the end of tonight. So please stick around after the dialogue section and see if you are the lucky winner of our $25 gift card. I'm Ashton Stewart. I am the manager of SAGEvets, which is a New York State program for older LGBT veterans. It's been around since 2014. I've been with the program since 2018, and the primary purpose is to help with legal referrals, predominantly for discharge upgrades and VBA benefits and compensation. We also assist with some newly passed legislation at the state level called the Restoration of Honor, which allows veterans who are discharged with an OTH or sexual orientation and gender identity, military sexual trauma, or PTSD to appeal to the State Division of Veterans Services for an upgrade to honorable and access to those state benefits that require that classification. We would like to also extend our gratitude to New York State legislators and New York City Council for supporting the SAGEvets program, because without that support, we would not be with you tonight. So let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce a friend of mine who made this event happen, retired specialist Catherine Laporte, who is one of 6 regional chairpersons of the National Association of Black Military Women, serving as the Northeast Region Chairwoman since 2019. Catherine currently serves as the Retiree Appreciation Day Chairwoman of the United States Army Garrison Fort Hamilton Military Retiree Council, where she has served for over 10 years. A true expert in all things veteran related, Catherine has also served as Chief of Staff and Deputy Commissioner of Operations and Special Projects for the City of New York's Mayor's Office of Veteran Affairs, MOVA, which is the early incarnation of the New York City Department of Veteran Services. Currently, Catherine is the U.S. Army New York City Recruiting Battalion Chief of Advertising and Public Affairs. So please, Catherine, would you like to take it away, please?
Ashton Stewart, thank you so much. We are thrilled that we are able to regroup, certainly after COVID. Thank you for all that you and SAGEvets do in the community. And we want to thank also Mr. Arnold Lewis for helping us come together today as well. After that introduction, I don't know. I'm looking around to see, who you might be referring to, but thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. So I'm here today to speak about the Northeast region, NABMW, and we'll be introducing you to some of our leaders here in the Northeast region on our board and our national president as well. They will be explaining to you a little bit about how we started, the history of Black women in the military, as well as the history of our organization. In addition to, you'll have an opportunity to meet our local leaders. One of our first chapters that were developed in the region was our New York City chapter, headed by the chapter president, Colonel retired Carol St. Pierre, so you'll get to meet her. Next came the Brooklyn chapter, which is headed by Colonel retired Dr. Annette Tucker Osborne. And you'll also have a chance to meet one of our immediate past presidents of the national NABMW, currently a New York City chapter member and also a board member, Colonel retired Stephanie Dawson. And then, of course, we're thrilled that our national president, Patricia Jackson-Kelley, Lieutenant Colonel retired, will join us as well. So you'll hear a little bit from them. I wanted just to talk about, in my current position here at the U.S. Army New York City Recruiting Battalion, it's really a joy to be here. After serving in the military myself and working very closely with a lot of you who are probably listening today, certainly with Ashton and many others at the mayor's office. It's really a pleasure to be now working back with the Army, and that they really are moving forward in the area of diversity and inclusion. Some of the things that you may not be aware of that they're doing, it's not just the talk, but the actions behind it, is, for example, if a soldier is appearing before a board, a promotion board, no longer are their photos included, the ethnicity or gender, all of that is being removed from their promotion packet. The other thing that they're doing is taking precautions and safeguards against harassment and discrimination, and then also just reviewing their various policies, whether it comes to hairstyle or cultural awareness, and those kinds of things. And for the women, just sort of getting up to speed, a simple thing like wearing earrings is now permitted in the military, in the Army. So it's really a pleasure, again, to be here. Our battalion, which stretches over 1,700 miles, 35 recruiting station, is headed by two women, Lieutenant Colonel Whitney Jensen, and our Command Sergeant Major is Command Sergeant Major Angela Indardio. Our Command Sergeant Major lives here in New York City, in Brooklyn, with her wife. And we also have diversity throughout the force, not just here in New York, but across the country. I don't want to take up too much time because we have such a wonderful program today, Ashton. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. I would like to turn it back to you because I believe that you have an intro prepared for President Jackson-Kelley.
I do. Thank you. So our next honored presenter to bring welcoming remarks from NABMW is someone who is very near and dear to my heart. She is the national president of NABMW. She is a U.S. Army, Navy, and Air Force reservist, and she served in the Air Force on active duty. After over 26 years of honorable service, she went on to serve at the VA as a program manager for a 40-bed substance abuse center. And she also has represented the organization during congressional hearings and around the country. And we're delighted that she's here today. Please welcome President Lieutenant Colonel retired Patricia Jackson-Kelley.
Thank you, Catherine, for those warm remarks. Again, it's my honor and my pleasure to welcome you to the event today. I'm honored that SAGEvets has partnered with us to provide this event today. And the reason being is I was really pleased that they recognized that the older vets are certainly not getting their fair share of the resources that they need. So since they are especially attuned to that, I am grateful for them, especially since I fall in that category. And gratefully, I fall in that category. So I'd like to welcome those of you who've never attended an NABMW event before. And those of you that have attended, I'd like to welcome you back. Thank you for attending today. And we know that you will enjoy the event. So at this time, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is someone near and dear to my heart. And that is our immediate past president, Colonel Stephanie E. Dawson. Colonel Dawson has 32 years of dedicated services in the United States Army. Prior to her retirement in July of 2011, she served as commander of the 53rd Troop Command, one of the major commands within the New York Army National Guard. Previously, Colonel Dawson led approximately 2,300 soldiers as commander of the 369 Sustainment Brigade. She was the first female to serve as a brigade commander in the New York Army National Guard. She also served as commander of the 27th Rear Area Operations Center based in Kuwait. In 2001, Colonel Dorsett was appointed Executive Officer of the 369 Corps Support Battalion during the Unit 911 activation. She led security, supply transportation, and other logistic support mission for initial Ground Zero operation. It would take an entire afternoon to recognize the many achievements of Colonel Dawson, but you need to know that she has numerous military awards, which include the Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, also the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Achievement Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal. She has been honored by many in her local and national community. She holds a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. And without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Colonel Dawson.
Thank you, Pat. Just a second to share my screen, and then I'll get started. Okay, so thank you very much, Pat, for that very warm welcome. And thank you to SAGEvets, especially you, Ashton. We've been talking to you for 2 years about coming to the fore to really talk just a little bit about the National Association of Black Military Women, what we do and why we do it, and also to talk a little bit about the 6888 Postal Directory Battalion. I'd like to start just briefly with a photo of a couple of ladies that you may be familiar with. One is Harriet Tubman, and she's known as a member of the Underground Railroad, primarily by most people, but she also was a Union spy during the American Civil War, the first Black woman to ever lead an American mission during the American Civil War. Cathay Williams, to your right, was the first known African-American woman to serve as a Buffalo Soldier. For those who don't know about the Buffalo Soldiers, they were historic, all African-American units that served in various wars. Cathay Williams enlisted in the Army on November 15th, 1866. That's when she became a soldier. She enlisted with the United States Regular Army in St. Louis, Missouri, as William Cathay. Women could not serve in the military, and like a few women before her, but she was white women, she was the first African-American to use that subterfuge in order to gain entry into the military. And Cathay served as a member of the all-Black 38th Infantry. And as I said, she served toward the tail end of the Civil War, but definitely during the Indian War. And these are the types of women whose story was not being told. When you look to the history books, until recently, for the most part, there were no African-American women mentioned, and very few women, period, were mentioned, although women served in various capacities throughout each and every military. Often the early ones, days of service, were as nurses because those were professional positions, but women still served throughout history. So I thought we'd start with those two because they sort of set the groundwork for why you need an organization to talk about African-American women. So NABMW, as the National Association of Black Military Women is called, has a simple mission. Their logo is to tell her story. The goal is to preserve and keep alive the history of military service. We hope to maintain the heritage of African-American women who have served and continue to serve. Now, especially with regards to those African-American women who served under segregated and discriminatory conditions, we think it's especially important to bring a focus on their service. And that's why we'll talk a little bit about the 6888 as well in the few minutes that we've been allotted. We also provide a network for informal mentorship, and on a national level and local level, scholarships are granted. And the scholarships are granted, usually there's a theme, and then we see who meets that theme best, and that's who gets the award. But both chapters and the national award scholarships. And you don't have to be a member of NABMW, you don't have to be a child of a member of NABMW, but you do have to know something. And if you don't know something, you have to learn something as part of the award process. We also have been entrusted with some artifacts. And while some of those artifacts are duplicated in some of the museums, the national museums, some are unique to us. And we hope to maintain them to the best of our ability. And the hope is long-term to find a specific and dedicated place for these artifacts. A little about our history. NABMW first came into being in Hampton, Virginia at a reunion. It wasn't originally called the National Association of Black Military Women, it was a bunch of members of the military, prior members of the military, from the Black Women's Army Auxiliary Corps and from the Women's Army Corps. And they celebrated the contributions in military service, primarily focused on World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. One of the things that happened was that this group of friends, associates, and colleagues began to have biennial reunions around the United States, except in 2020, obviously due to COVID-19. In 1994, an organizational structure meeting was held, headed by one of the World War II veterans, who was also a member of the 688. Her name was Gladys Schuster at the time, and became Gladys Schuster Carter as she married. She's known as the mother of the NABMW because she did a lot of work in developing the organizational strategy, and she brought to bear her vast knowledge of, education and so forth. In 1996, bylaws were approved, and we officially became the National Association of Black Military Women. And the focus expanded to all services and all eras. The organization was incorporated in Maryland in 1997, and the installation of the first national officers happened in April 1999 with the installation of Colonel Dolores Hampton as president. Dolores Hampton also is credited with the logo to tell her story. NABMW is across the country with regular life and associate members. The associate members do not have to have served in the military. A number of men are associate members, a number of young ladies are associate members. NABMW membership is open to all. However, we particularly, as I mentioned earlier, celebrate World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veterans, although given the recent events, we also recognize Desert Storm and after, including Iraq and Afghanistan, and all of the known 688 members have been recognized as granted honorary membership in NABMW. I mean, as you can imagine, we're excited that there are remaining 688 members, and we honor them at every opportunity that we get. NABMW is in 38 states. We have 5 active chapters. The DC, Maryland, Virginia chapter just came on board in March. Also Atlanta, LA, New York, and Brooklyn are active chapters, having been recognized as chapters in that order. We also have 4 inactive chapters and 1 pending chapter on the West Coast in San Diego. As of March of this year, NABMW has 400 members. It's almost doubled in the last 3 years. So that's noteworthy given the current climate. NABMW, as you would imagine, collaborates with a lot of organizations, and this is just a sample. We have a foundation called the Black Military Women Foundation. They spearhead discussions about our artifacts and have a goal of trying to come up with a distinct and separate place to warehouse those artifacts so that the story can be told at leisure. We early on became members of Women in Military Service Association, also known as WIMSA, Black Veterans for Social Justice, and other national organizations. one of the things I wanted to make sure that I was able to talk about is the 688. And I gave you the reason for that. What some people don't know is that this was a male unit, MAIL unit, and their logo was no male, no morale. For all who have been in the military, we know other than having a place to sleep and having food, male is a top priority. So let's talk a little bit about the 688 and how they came to be. As those of you who are history buffs probably know, there was a big push to get anybody to join the military that we could. But specifically because of the nature of World War II and the fact that it was not progressing as one would have hoped or expected from a world power, there was a lot of, some call it propaganda, some call it just smart marketing that says women can do it too. So on the left of this slide, you see the "we can do it" slide with the making the muscle. So women were asked to participate as civilians and were approved to be in the military with full military status when the WAC, Women's Army Corps, came into being. Now, this focuses primarily on Army women. There were others who served during that same period. The reason that we focus on the 688, they were unique in that they were a WAC unit, a Women's Army Corps unit. They were all female, and they were headed by a female commander. As you might imagine, this did not come about very easily or very quickly. The behind the scenes, there are always advocates. Two of the advocates that I identify on this page are Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary Mcleod Bethune. I think most people are aware of what a pivotal role Eleanor Roosevelt played, in the Roosevelt administration. What people don't know is how involved she was in, one, the deploying of women, and two, in particular, the deploying of African-American women. There were also many leaders in the African-American community who were staunch advocates. What's different about these two women is that they had the ability to do something about it. Eleanor Roosevelt, because of her position, and Mary Mcleod Bethune, because although she's known as an educator, she was not only an educator and principal in the education field, but she also was a public servant, serving directly in the Roosevelt administration and having a huge voice in all things African-American. And in particular, she laid the groundwork for the training based on her education experience that was given to the 688 and other female units that were deploying under the auspices of the WACs. With that help, there was first a recognition that there was a need for a particular type of unit, and that was a postal service. The Department of the Army engaged families to send mail to soldiers, as you see by the slide on the left. It says, keep them smiling with letters. What wasn't anticipated was how much mail would become backlogged because of the op-tempo of the war. I spoke about that a little bit. We were on the move. Troops were on the move frequently. And when you're on the move, your mail doesn't get to you. And when your mail doesn't get to you, you have a lot of unhappy soldiers. So the unit was formed in 1944. However, groundwork was laid back in 1942 when Major Charity Adams was designated commander. As I mentioned, in 1943, the WACs were given full military service. However, they remained segregated like the regular Army. There were 824 African-American women including 31 officers in that battalion. So it was not a small battalion. And they completed their training in Georgia. Before the training happened and before Major Adams was appointed, she was working on her master's at Columbia University. So she was certainly at the top of her game, and she served as a company commander, an operations officer, training officer in the all women's environment that had been fostered by Mrs. Bethune and also by Eleanor Roosevelt. But because of segregation, there were special challenges that this unit faced. They had to be self-sufficient. They could not share services with the rest of the Army because it was a segregated environment. And being women in a combat theater, and so many women together, there were safety and security issues. These are just a few photos of the 688 in action. You'll see to the far left, Major Adams and her staff. To the far right, you see her inspecting her troops. She wanted to make sure that there were no issues whatsoever with her battalion because there were many who did not believe in service by women and did not believe in service by African Americans, and certainly did not believe in service by African American females. So she wanted to make sure everything was, as we say in the military, dress, fight, dress. On the bottom, we see some of the backlog that they inherited. They inherited a 6-month backlog, and that was modest in terms of estimating how much backlog there was. The millions of pieces of mail that they moved was growing constantly due to the op-tempo of the war. And the warehouses that the mail was kept in had lots of issues and opportunities with infestation and so forth that had to be dealt with. And yet they prevailed. One might say that their service was a testimony to belief, because despite the fact that many didn't believe in them, these ladies believed in themselves. And despite the fact that they were WAC soldiers, Women's Army Corps soldiers, they weren't all from the Army. The African American women were drawn from the WAC, the Army Service Forces, and the Army Air Forces. And they became together the 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion. While many acknowledge what an amazing job the 688 did during their tenure, they did not receive any unit recognition, personal individual awards. There was no parade. When they were discharged, they just went home and resumed their lives. There was some recognition of them earlier in the 21st century. However, a formal ceremony with all the ribbons and trappings was not done until November of 2018. And as you see in front of you, this was the monument dedication ceremony for them. And pursuant to that dedication ceremony, they also received a parade. And that's a thank you to Mr. Carlton Philpott, who was the project manager for the Buffalo Soldiers Commission. And he ensured that everything was pitch perfect with regards to their ceremony. Some would ask, well, why are they in Buffalo Soldiers Monument Park? No particular reason other than the fact that the commission itself believed in the 688, and they were winning the war on getting the message out. And Buffalo Monument Park is dedicated, again, primarily to Buffalo soldiers, but also includes this distinguished postal unit. Today, unlike the picture that I showed you earlier of women who people probably don't know, the women on this page are probably well known to everyone. And chief among them is, of course, Admiral Michelle Howard. Many of us saw Admiral Howard for the first time when the Somali pirates were on board her ship. Since then, she became the first woman in the Navy to receive her 4th star. The other women on this page are all distinguished in their own right. The Marine in the bottom center is Vernice Armor, and she was the first African-American female naval aviator in the Marine Corps, and the first African-American female combat pilot in the United States Armed Forces. Above her is Command Sergeant Major Evelyn Hollis, who was the first African-American female Command Sergeant Major of a combat arms unit. The woman on the right passed unexpectedly several years ago, and was also, in addition to being a member of the National Association of Black Military Women, her career included too many firsts to name. However, she was the first female aircraft maintenance officer, one of the first 2 female air officers commanding at the United States Air Force Academy, and the Air Force's first female director of maintenance. She also served in the White House as a social aide during the Carter administration. To the far right is Lieutenant Junior Grade Janine McIntosh, who was in the Coast Guard, and she was awarded her wings after completing her flight training there on 24 June 2005. She's the first African-American female Coast Guard aviator. I point out these ladies to show how far we have come, but there's also the point to be made that there's still a long way to go, because we're still celebrating all of the firsts. And one of the things that we at the National Association of Black Military Women hope is that we will be celebrating the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th on infinitum of all the African-American women who serve in conjunction with our other brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you.
Colonel Dawson, that was amazing. Thank you so much. This is such important history for people to know, especially given the we finally got to this anti-racist part of American society where people are actively looking into history like this. We have come a long way since 688, but we do have a long way to go. The new policy that we mentioned earlier, the Deborah Sampson Act at the VA, I would like to dig a little deeper into that when we get a chance. I know that President Patricia Jackson-Kelley was very involved with testifying in Congress about that. And there's still some shortcomings there. Women in general just have not yet got the respect or care that they have deserved for fighting for their country. Before we get to that, let's carry on with the program. Shawanna Boyd
Could I just correct the record about something that was said, since we are being recorded? I was not the commander of 53rd Troop Command. I was the deputy commander with responsibility for supervision of those 2 brigades for a short period of time. So thank you.
Thank you for your attention to detail, Colonel Dawson. That's much appreciated. We don't want that kind of thing to be on record. Shawanna Boyd is one of the newer members to the SAGE team. She's an experienced care manager and healthcare professional and a veteran of the U.S. Army National Guard. Currently, Shawanna takes pride in providing care management to SAGE veterans and participants. As a care manager, Shawanna makes it her primary goal to provide the best possible support and advocacy to ensure veterans and participants are receiving each and every benefit available to maximize their overall health and well-being. In addition, Shawanna is a proud new member of the Brooklyn chapter of the NABMW. And I love working with Shawanna. She's a great team member for SAGE and for SAGEvets. And so Shawanna, would you like to take it away, please?
Thank you, Ashton, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. I learned a lot from the presentation. So I served in the Army National Guard, but when I served, it was don't ask, don't tell. So it was never really any discussion about sexuality, gender identity, or anything to that. But I currently am the case manager for SAGEvets, and as Ashton mentioned, we currently are trying to help get discharge upgrades because a lot of them were discharged dishonorably because of their sexuality or gender identity. I also help advise them with getting help through the VA and other community agencies such as Meals on Wheels, or any type of Social Security, anything to that nature. We together, me and the veteran together, we develop and implement treatment approaches to address social problems or health problems, acute medical issues, chronic conditions. We also help them through attorneys get advance directives for those that want it, or living wills. We, for those that have caregivers, we do have a caregiving care management that can also provide a respite. We can refer them for things like mental health if they have mental health issues and want to discuss it, or even drug or alcohol problems. We also help them with socialization. We currently have a SAGEvets group meeting that we do every Friday, which is wonderful. We have wonderful veterans that share their stories about their time in the military. And thank you, Ashton. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Shawanna. I just want to mention that veterans with pursuing a discharge upgrade, there's other than honorable in addition to the dishonorable discharges. And thank you so much for mentioning the Veteran Support Group, which Shawanna facilitates by telephone every Friday. I'm going to put a link to our newsletter in the chat momentarily. You can find that link and information in there if it's something that you would like to share with anybody you think might want to join us. But yes, I'm going to kick it back over to for our next introduction.
Okay, thank you, Ashton. It was wonderful to hear all the great things that you're doing, and it's a good reminder for us all to share the information. So really appreciate that. Our next presenter that I'd like to introduce has served our great nation for over 30 years in the Army Reserves, as well as her civilian career. She served as a head nurse in charge, as an assistant nurse for family readiness, and the liaison and detachment commander for Fort Totten in Queens, New York. She was assigned to the 8th Medical Brigade at Fort Wadsworth as the chief nurse, and she accredits her family readiness work as a liaison coordinator as her most rewarding assignments. She currently is the nurse navigator clinical coordinator at the oncology unit at Mount Sinai Hospital, and is currently the lead military veterans employment resource group for diversity and conclusion at Mount Sinai Health System. She's participating in numerous humanitarian missions in Nigeria and Haiti, and she leads the National Association of Black Military Women, New York City chapter. She is Colonel Retired Carol St. Pierre.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for that. Wonderful, wonderful. I just want to thank you and Ashton for organizing this special event, for not giving up and saying we're going to have it done, and we did it for 2021. So I want to thank both of you for doing that. I have some slides. So my name again is Colonel Retired Carol St. Pierre, and I'm the president of the New York chapter of NABMW. Next. The next slide. Okay, I won't go over this particular slide because Colonel Dawson went over it very, very well. And so I'll continue with the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. The next slide is New York City chapter key programs. Our key program is to strengthen partnership with women and minority veteran organization in the local area, to support key chapter initiative for deployed military soldiers, adopt a platoon, care packages, holiday cheer, you name it. Provide local scholarship, enhance local veteran family support activities, provide speaker for local veterans events, provide informal mentorship, and be an advocate for her story. Next slide. This particular slide really focused on 2020 as well as 2021. When the COVID occurred, it was March, as everybody knows. And we had to do something with the chapter to keep people together as cohesive as possible. One of the things that we did in the chapter, we initiated a prayer Zoom every 2 weeks, nonstop. And we're still continuing the prayer Zoom. Everybody's invited, all the chapters, everyone, because we wanted to continue the support, to support our members and to support anybody that needed prayer to be able to come and pray with us. We also did something where we initiated an angel call where we would call members and tell them, how are you? How's everything? Just to make sure that members knew that we didn't forget them, that we were there for them. Remember, some members were older individuals and they stayed at home, never went out. So we reached out to them and to make sure that they knew that we were available if needed. We started a workshop, and one of the workshops really was part of the COVID. We did COVID vaccine because at this particular time, people don't know about the vaccine, didn't know should they take it, shouldn't they take it. So we gave like an education about the type of vaccine that was going to be out there. We also informed them of the current trials. We needed to know how this decision was made. So we did that to educate people. We did a mindful, resilient yoga session just to have people relax. And because it's so hectic, just to be able to relax and exercise and be together, even though it was Zoom related, but it was very, very successful. We are going to have a pain management. A lot of members, a lot of people are in pain. They're not going to the doctors, they're suffering. So we're gonna have a physician come in and just talk about pain so that people be aware of what's going on with their body. We're also gonna have anxiety, sleep, vitamin B deficiency. The vitamin D deficiency, I had gone to a conference And I learned so much about vitamin D. I'm really telling people, if you don't take vitamin D, go buy vitamin D, because that's gonna be the one that's gonna help the COVID. It's gonna really attack that. You have to have your vitamin D. So I had one of our sorrow come in and did a workshop for us, and we plan to have a second phase of the workshop. Next, we couldn't do a fundraising in 2020 because we couldn't be together, and so what we did was we did a care package for soldiers. Every year we send care package to soldiers as needed. Not that they need the content of the care package, but for a soldier to get a care package, December means a lot to them. So we initiated that. We also did a vet home Christmas gift. We have a particular vet home that we go to every year, and we couldn't go this year. We were able to ship everything that we gathered and bought to them. We did a children holiday toy drive. And like I said, we couldn't reach to them, but we were able to mail. We were able to make sure that the children receive a gift during the holiday. And we did information on health workshop, like I indicated, and so forth. Next slide. Okay, we started a fundraising event for all these activities that I just mentioned, and we just did one with the stay-at-home tea last week. And this particular event was that we were in Zoom. Like I said, we can't meet, but we had our tea, and we had educational event, whereas members taught us about where the tea came from. We did the Asian, we did the English tea. And just for people to be aware, when you drink tea, you'll have to say, oh, this is an English tea, or this is from Asian, or whatever. But we did an educational so that people would be aware of it. We are going to plan to have a Mary Kay party on May 23rd. And we wanted people to wear makeup. Lipstick. We don't even wear lipstick anymore because we have the mask. Nobody is seeing us. So we decided to really have people get together and then talk about makeup, and then buy makeup and wear the makeup. So that's one of the events that we're gonna be having in May. And we're doing a t-shirt fundraising for the members. Next. Like I indicated, the New York chapter members participate in Holy Garden Veteran Pantry. And their mission is to feed the homeless, veteran, and community members. And we went, and we were able to go there and actually give people food, because you cannot even imagine how hungry veterans, even the community, are, and they need us to provide that for them. We did, like I said, a community service. We did a holiday drive activity, and we collaborated with the New York Senator Leroy Comrie Veteran Advisor Committee. And like I said, we weren't able to attend the Honor House. We usually go every year. Honor House for male vets. We couldn't go, but we made sure that we provided them with gifts during the holiday. Next. Oh, which one is that? Okay, New York member. Okay. So like I said, one of our really goals, the New York chapter, is to really help our members. Some people are very scared. They don't want to go out. They want to keep the mask on. They don't want to take vaccine, but just to educate people why you do certain things. You're not telling them to do it, but to educate individual and for people to know that they have somebody that they can reach out to. And that's our really goal, is to make sure that people know that I could call so-and-so, I could call Colonel Tucker Osborne and say to her, oh, how are you doing, sis? Can I help you? Do you need anything? And she'll probably say, nope, I don't need anything. But at least she knows that I'm there for her 100%. And so with that, I have the a website, and our website is very simple. It's New York City, NABMW.org. And then I have the Gmail. If you want to email us, if you need anything, we're here to provide. If I don't know a certain thing, I have my resources. I could reach out to any chapter of NABMW and say, I need help, and they will provide the assistance. So our account is New York City, NABMW 2009 at gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat list if anybody want to go and look at our website. All the information that I just told you everything is in the website, everything. So please, if you ever want to pray, we do it every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we pray, and it won't be this week because it's a holiday, but it'll be the following week. And I'll put the time and the date, so in the chat. If anybody wants to, they're welcome to. So with that, I will be followed by Dr. Annette Tucker Osborne, Colonel, retired. Well, she has a lengthy bio, but I'm gonna go for it. Colonel Tucker Osborne, Dr. Tucker Osborne, has been in the military for over 30 years. And so she was the chief nurse of the 8th Medical Brigade and at Fort Wadsworth. She served the principal staff officer to the commander. Colonel retired Tucker Osborne holds a master's degree from the New School of Social Research, postmaster in nursing education from College of Mount St. Vincent, postmaster of legal nurse consultant, doctorate in healthcare administration, DHA, from Walden University. She currently serves as community member in the Doctrine of Healthcare Administration for the Department of Health Science at Central Michigan University, and continues to work as a nurse consultant, conducting mock survey for nurses, nursing home, and hospital. And with no ado, I will be followed by Dr. Annette Tucker Osborne, Colonel, retired. Colonel,
Yes, ma'am.
you're on.
God bless Ashton. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. Ashton, I would like to thank you and SAGEvets for having NABMW jointly for this celebration for Women's History Month. So I was asked to speak on what's happening in Brooklyn chapter. But as you know, since COVID-19 hit us globally, face-to-face meetings and events have ceased for now. So however, we did not let the pandemic stop us from reaching out to our sister soldiers, whether it's through phone, email, or text. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? As we all know, it has taken a toll emotionally on a lot of us. So we have to keep the momentum by constantly contacting our members. We have now started having Zoom meetings since we cannot no longer right now have face-to-face. I want to commend the Brooklyn chapter for I'm getting like tongue-tied here. I'd like to commend the Brooklyn chapter for quickly acclimating to the quarantine situation, how we now have to live our lives. Okay. Since the pandemic, we have now had virtual graduations, virtual birthday parties, and we've had holiday celebrations. As you know, normally this month, which is Women's History Month, we would have been celebrating it person to person at the Princess Manor, which many of you have attended. Since that, we are now celebrating this year our 4th year anniversary as a chapter. And to celebrate that, we will be honoring 7 well-deserved frontline workers. And we will be celebrating that May 20th, virtually, save the date. We will be having as our host none other than Dr. Barb Lee from WBLS TV radio station. Prior to that, though, I wanted to go back a minute and talk about our Black History Month. We had a very successful Black History Month where we had none other than Rhonda Ross, yes, Diana Ross's daughter. She gave us a shout out, and the Grammy Award winning, what you saying, Ashton? And the Grammy Award winning, I can't even hear you, and a Grammy Award winning Howard Hewitt gave us a beautiful shout out. So that was really surprising, but we were jumping, we were dancing, we had great hosts, we had DJ, and hey, this is what we had to do through the pandemic. What we do now is we continue to have, we continue to send care packages to our fellow soldiers overseas. We had adopted a unit. Some of them have now returned from theater, and we still keep up with them. We have earlier this year assisted with Black Veterans for Social Justice, HelloFresh, which gave out food, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. Our biggest thing that we love to do every December is placing wreaths across America, is what it's called. 2 years ago, we started doing this at Arlington National Cemetery. The year after that, we went to Calverton. And this past December, we were supposed to go back to Calverton, but because of COVID, they canceled us. This year coming, we intend to go to Arlington National Cemetery, and it's usually the second week in December. I believe it's this year, it is December 18th. It's very emotional when you see some of the names on the tombstones and to place the wreath and to salute that tombstone. It's very emotional. Now, the other question that I was asked to speak about was the importance of diversity and equity. Yes, absolutely important. We live in a melting pot and are fortunate enough to live among such diverse nation, such a diverse nation representing so many backgrounds. And cultural awareness is very, very important. But I want to say something about the military. For over 3 decades, diversity has been a very complex topic within the armed forces. It's about differences. It's about whether perceived or real among diverse groups, and it prides itself as being leaders in diversity. But do you agree with that? Well, I don't. I tend to disagree. Why? Because there is still much prejudice amongst ranks where Black, Brown, LGBT have to work so much harder to get promoted and to receive their accomplishments. I give you an example. Before my deployment to Kuwait, a lot of times you don't meet the whole group until you get to pre-MOB. I met my commander at Fort McPherson, Georgia. When he saw this African-American colonel, you could see his face. He was so shocked. And you know what he says? Are you up for the challenge? I'm saying to myself, and I have a bad habit of showing my whole expression on my face. I said to myself, is he serious? I'm gonna leave that right there. What do you think? I'm gonna leave that right there for you to think about that. This is a person that once we got to theater, instead, this is a medical unit, mind you. This is a medical unit. Normally, and for all the ones that's on this call, who have served, know that usually a medical unit has either a doctor or a nurse to command. Well, this did not happen. This was an educator. In fact, he was a coach in a high school. So guess what? He needed this Black African-American chief nurse to be his right-hand woman, I don't want to say man, his right-hand woman, to help him out with the soldiers. I was the chief nurse of the theater. I handled all the medical records. I handled whenever soldiers needed to be seen. I had all of that. So when anything happened, I would tell him, but he really needed me to kind of let him know about the health of these soldiers. I had been in Kuwait for 6 months, and I was at that point the only African-American female colonel in theater, right? Some of the soldiers came up to me and had said they had never seen an African-American woman in this rank before. And these are my brown and Black soldiers. Now I had to, with my Caucasian enlisted, they tried to, would you believe, walk by me and not acknowledge that I had that bird on my chest. Okay, so I stopped them right in their tracks and said, excuse me, do you see this? I had to make them salute. But you know what I'm saying? Why do we have to go through that? It shouldn't matter what color, it's about the rank. It's not about the color of your skin, it's about the rank, and you should respect the rank. Better believe, before I left that theater, everybody knew who Colonel Tucker Osborne was. I'm serious. I am very serious. There's one thing I did want to point out, and of course I can't find my paper now. Hold on. About many firsts, because this is about diversity. So, before that, my father, who was an enlisted Air Force soldier, always would ask me, is there prejudice in the military? Is there still, let me put it that way, is there still prejudice in the military? And I have to say, yes, it is, Dad, it is. It's still prejudice in the military. Like I said earlier, because we have to work so hard, not only to get promoted, but to be acknowledged. Why are we still doing that? We're still doing that. It's still happening. However, if you think about it, it took so long for these many firsts. And one of the first was Judge Sonia Sotomayor. That's the first. Second first, General Lloyd Austin, Defense Secretary. That's the first. Peter, and I'm probably going to mess up his name, Pete Buttigieg, former US Navy officer and first gay cabinet member. He is now the United States Department of Transportation. A first. VP Harris, a first. And I was just notified last week of another first. Brigadier General Andrew Haywood was recently promoted as the first Black general and chief chaplain of the Army Reserves. Are you kidding me? This is the first. Why? And I'm asking the audience here, why did it take so long for these firsts? And that's just something to think about. I'm done. Thank you. I will now be followed by And of course, my paper again is gone. Oh. I will now be followed by Christine L. Rouse, who is the Deputy Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Programs. Christine?
Sorry, my fingers were sticking to get myself off of mute. Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker Osborne. Truly appreciate that kind introduction. So I am here representing the New York State Division of Veteran Services. Thank you so much to Ashton and to Sage and all that you all do. Thank you so much to Catherine and all of the tremendous leaders of NABMW. It is an honor to join you this evening and to be among so many incredible leaders on whose shoulders I stand. And I do want to make mention that it's wonderful to be on a program with Colonel Stephanie Dawson. When I first came to New York City and was in the National Guard, my very first National Guard unit was the 369th Harlem Hellfighters. And learning about that unit's incredible, hard but proud history of service in World War I as the first all African-American National Guard unit to be raised to be sent over to World War I, the longest deployed unit, American unit of World War I, fought valiantly. Just tremendous history there, and it really piqued my interest in New York's historic, rich history of military service that represents so much of American military history, but so much of our nation's diversity and like so many stories that need to be told about our nation's military history. And I was also there when Colonel Dawson took command as the first woman to lead that unit. And so the historic nature of that was never lost on me. And so Colonel Dawson remains one of my heroes today. And so I thank her and all of you for allowing me to be on the program with one of my heroes. So what I'm here to talk about this evening specifically is some new legislation that has come to pass related to women veterans. And so, talking about representation and why does it take so long to get representation? So the first piece of legislation that I want to mention is something Ashton asked me to talk about, which is a local, a national piece of legislation that was passed in Congress in January, but one that impacts us here locally in New York City. So, a few years ago, the issue came up that there was no VA medical center that was named for a woman combat veteran. The second largest agency in our federal government, somewhere upwards of nearly 400,000 employees, medical centers and facilities located across all of our states and territories. One of the largest healthcare systems in the world, but not one facility named in honor of a woman combat veteran. And so, looking at that locally, what's a good story to tell? A story that has been told many times in New York City, maybe you know it, is one of Margaret Corbin, a woman who served in the Revolutionary War. She, like many women, were part of the camps of the Revolutionary War soldiers of the Continental Army. When a man would go to war, he often had his wife with him to basically do the logistics support, to do the laundry, to do the cooking, to find the food, to do the stuff to support the combat arms troops. And again, today we call it logistics. So basically, Margaret Corbin was there providing logistical support for the unit that ended up stationed in Manhattan. They constructed Fort Washington up in Washington Heights at the very north end of Manhattan. They set up a fort. There were on one of the hills. They had cannons pointed down to guard along the Harlem River, and a Revolutionary War cannon took three people to operate to do all the clunky work of making this 1700s era machinery work to be able to fire at an oncoming enemy. So in November of 1776, as the British troops were coming up to basically take over that hilltop in Washington Heights, what is now Washington Heights, Margaret Corbin's husband was one of the artillerymen operating cannons, and the British very quickly overwhelmed the American forces, and many of the soldiers fell. As with the oncoming attack, Margaret Corbin's husband fell. It's basically all of the men manning the cannons fell. Margaret Corbin knew how to operate the cannon, and she, as men fell, she quickly got up and made sure that the cannon stayed firing, to wipe out the cannon and then push, put the shot back in it and, load it, fire it. And eventually everybody fell. And Margaret Corbin was the last soldier standing in that battle, the last American soldier standing. Hers was the last cannon firing in that battle. And until she herself fell to wounds that nearly killed her. She was shot in the face and the arm. She was just devastated and was basically left for dead. But she somehow survived and ended up being assigned to the wounded warrior, what they called then the Corps of Invalids, assigned to West Point, New York. And she basically was assigned as a soldier. She was paid and she was pensioned as an American soldier for the rest of her life. And so she was recognized for the wounds that she incurred in combat. And so basically, Margaret Corbin was the first woman paid and pensioned in the United States military, and she fell in combat in Manhattan in 1776. And so the organization, the nonprofit organization that I founded, which is separate from my duties with the state, but the New York City Veterans Alliance, they are the ones who did the advocacy work to get a bill introduced and passed in Congress over the last several years. They did the work to get all of the veterans organizations to sign on, to get all of the New York State legislators to sign on, to get the governor's support, a lot of local legislators, to get all of the support in place needed, the community support needed to introduce and pass that bill. And it was signed into law in January. And so the Manhattan VA is actually now known by law as the Margaret Cochran Corbin campus of the VA Harbor Medical Center, so medical system. So Manhattan VA is now the first VA medical center to be named in honor of a woman veteran, and it is in honor of the first woman paid and pensioned as a member of the military, and she fought right here in Manhattan. And so that has come to pass. I believe there will be in the upcoming weeks or months a coordinated event to mark that. When it is more safe for folks to gather, when the signage is completed, and when leadership is ready to come together and to celebrate that. So the representation always matters. And so as the VA continues to improve its ability to serve all of the women veterans who rely on it, there is now a VA hospital that is named for a woman veteran, a historic woman veteran. And so hopefully we will see more VA medical centers across the country, across the state and across the country, who are named in honor of folks who need to be honored, stories that need to be told, representation that needs to happen, where people can go to a VA named in honor of somebody that they feel represents them. And so if you need pro tips on how to get that done, please reach out to me. And I can connect you to some folks who know the legislative path on that. So that's something that's local, but something that affects all women veterans nationally is another bill that was passed in January, named in honor of another Revolutionary War veteran who was a woman. The Deborah Sampson Act is named in honor of a soldier who enlisted in Massachusetts, and she actually ended up fighting in Westchester County here in New York. So another New York connection to the Revolutionary War. Deborah Sampson enlisted, dressing as a man and portraying herself as a man, under the name Robert Shurtleff. And she was wounded in combat, and she had to hide her wounds and basically treat herself in order to not be discovered and thrown out of the military. It wasn't until she fell unconscious that she was in combat that she was discovered to be a woman, and then she was discharged. But she did end up earning a pension after fighting many years in her life. So Deborah Sampson really represents the struggle of women veterans to receive recognition and care. And so the Deborah Sampson Act, it was passed in January in a massive omnibus bill. And so like many hundreds of pages were spent on new legislation to care for veterans, which is a really great thing. There's a lot of good stuff has been passed in recent months and is in the process of being implemented. And so please, be sure to look for changes to come. If you receive VA care, look for some new announcements. And if you haven't gone to the VA for care, maybe think about this maybe being a good time to get enrolled and to take advantage of a changing and growing VA that is starting to recognize all of us and to be better calibrated to serve all of us. But to hit the wave tops of the Deborah Sampson Act, it's hard to condense several hundred pages into just a few minutes, but I'm going to give you the main points of it. So there's 5 key areas that the Deborah Sampson Act improves care for women at VA. So the first is improving access. So to make sure that women are able to better access VA care. And then another component of it is to increase the cultural competency of VA staff to serve women veterans, so that it's not just one provider who knows how to serve women veterans. It's greater competency across all of VA to serve the growing number of women veterans who are relying on VA for care. The third component of it is to eliminate harassment and assault, like really serious new policies to really dig in and get after the culture of VA to ensure that all can access VA care free of discrimination and harassment and assault. And then there's an entire subsection that has specifications for new data collection and reporting. And then there's the last subsection implements or has a few call outs for specific changes in benefits. So most of Deborah Sampson applies to VHA, Veterans Health, but there's that in that last section, there's a few veteran benefits matters that it addresses. And so that's the 5 components of it. But so just to dig in just a little deeper on the first component, so the improving access for women veterans to VA, like how do they do that? So there's going to be greater attention, like a greater build out of the office for, let me make sure I get it right, the Office of Women's Health within VHA. So there's going to be greater attention focused on that. And so you will see more built out in the Office of Women's Health. So like a lot of you know that there's a Center for Women Veterans at VA that advises the VA secretary that on kind of both health and benefits. But the Office of Women's Health is within VHA is going to be a more developed entity that you'll hear more about for them to have more agency, more say, more oversight. And then also you're going to see a 5-year retrofit of all VA facilities to ensure that all VA facilities can adequately serve women. There's going to be greater attention to the standards of care, greater attention, on, reintegration and readjustment services for women veterans, legal services for women veterans, more data collection, more attention focused on the homeless women veterans who are being served. There's going to be a pilot program for women, all veterans, to ensure that there's health care, or that there's child care, so that veterans can access health appointments and not have child care be a barrier to getting health care. There's going to be a mandate for prosthetics to fit women veterans to be available at all VA facilities, because that's been a pain point for many women veterans who need prosthetics, but facilities don't have them to fit their body appropriately. So this is like the buck stops here on a lot of these lingering issues that we've heard about for so many years. There's more in it, but then I mentioned there's the second component of Deborah Sampson is increasing staff cultural competency across all of VA. You'll see more focus on the women veteran program coordinators and more studies and data to say, to look at the effectiveness of what's been happening and how it can be improved. And so, so this will take a little while to implement, but VA is working on it now to start getting after some of this data collection and analysis to be able to make some changes. A really big one is that eliminating harassment and assault. Like gender-based harassment and assault have to go. And looking at the cultural competency and also changing the culture within VA. We know that roughly 1 in 5 women veterans who seek care at VA say that they've been harassed or assaulted, oftentimes by fellow patients at VA. So if you read through the bill, it's like really serious, specific ways that VA is going to get after changing the culture. And part of that is going to be working with community organizations. And so I hope that NABMW is one of the organizations that VA calls upon to help with these cultural changes. But also to, reaching out to the big legacy organizations like the VFW and the American Legion to get their help to say, can you let your members know that we cannot harass other veterans within VA facilities? Everybody must feel safe. No matter who you are, if you are seeking care, if you are there to help other veterans, whatever reason you're at VA, you must have an experience that is free of discrimination, of harassment, and definitely of assault. So there's a lot of provisions in there, and I'm looking forward to the VA communicating more to community partners, to government partners, so that together all of us can make sure that all VA facilities, wherever we are safe. So look forward to that. And then looking at, so there's some specific call outs for data collection and reporting, looking at, why aren't women veterans able to get health care, like really drilling down into some of the specifics. But something that I do want to bring your attention to, like in that last section for benefits matters. Something that, there's a lot of work that yet needs to be done to make sure that we are caring for those who have survived military sexual trauma or any kind of sexual assault or sexual violence, to ensure that all care and benefits activities are sensitive and culturally competent to that. But so a change that has already taken place under this law is that if you are going to a C&P exam to be evaluated for anything related to an MSP claim, you are entitled to choose the gender of the healthcare provider who sees you for that claim. And so to let every veteran, this is not just women veterans, like veterans of any gender identity, if you have a VA claim for anything related to sexual trauma, you go for that exam, you are entitled to choose the gender of that provider. And so that is in effect time now. And there's a lot of other good stuff. But what I'm going to do is we recently did a lunch and learn with some of the folks who got the Deborah Sampson Act passed. And so with some of those advocates, and some of them are now working in government to implement some of this stuff. So it's an hour-long conversation with many of the folks responsible for the Deborah Sampson Act and who you'll see implementing it. And that lunch and learn it's on YouTube, and I'm going to put the link in the comments so that you can watch that at your leisure if you want to learn more, if you want to see some of the folks who were responsible for it. This is really great legislation. It applies to women veterans. Queer women are women veterans. Trans women are women veterans. We all count as women veterans in the Deborah Sampson Act. But as far as call outs for the, specific to the LGBT community, as you know, there are LGBT coordinators at every VA facility. You may have to find them, but they are there. And VA, the new VA Secretary McDonough has made it clear that that creating a, safe spaces, competent healthcare for women veterans, eliminating discrimination and assault at all VA facilities. Those are priorities for him. And he also has made the statement that he wants to ensure that all transgender veterans are able to receive culturally competent and safe care at all VA facilities. He's made those priorities clear, which is very encouraging. Some legislation that has been introduced by Congressman Mark Takano is to create a commission to study the impacts of military service on LGBTQ veterans. And so that law has been introduced. It has not yet been passed, but hopefully we'll see a near future where more healthcare and benefits issues specific to the LGBTQ community and the impact and what the impacts of exclusionary policies have done to us, whether we made it through Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or, our earlier policies or any of that. I look forward to a day where that can be assessed and where there can be an omnibus bill named after a queer veteran, hopefully, where that can be passed and where the VA can better address our specific needs, and to ensure that we have culturally competent care at every single veteran VA facility across the United States and all territories. Like, that hasn't happened yet, but I believe that day is coming. So, so again, I'm going to drop the link to our lunch and learn in the comments, and I'll also put my email in there so you can reach out to me on any specific issues. Also reach out to Ashton. He's, definitely an expert too. But thank you all for allowing me to speak and to share all of that. I know it's a lot of information. I tried to make it short, but thank you all so much.
Kristen Rouse, we thank you. We thank you because we're in the business of telling her story at NABMW. And it's important for us to tell the story of those who have served and those who are currently serving. And it is through our stories that our history is preserved and that we can educate those who come after us. And so we would be remiss if we didn't underscore your great advocacy work here in New York City and in Washington. And the things that you talked about today, you were instrumental in making happen. Not only the Deborah Sampson Act, not only the renaming of the VA Medical Center, but also your work in helping to convert what was a mayoral office for veteran services into the current DVS, or Department of Veteran Services. And you continue your work, certainly after your 3 tours in Afghanistan and the great work you're doing at IABA, in addition to the governors and the governor's administration. So we thank you for all of that. Ashton?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Kristen. It's been quite a program. We are going to move into our Q&A portion, but I just want to like sort of tie a couple of loose ends here. Representative Julian Brownlee from California, the sponsor of the Deborah Sampson Act, also introduced Resolution 50 that supports naming some VA facilities after women veterans and minority veterans. So we're starting to see a lot of progress. We're going in the right direction. I'm a member of the American Legion, and their current issue of their magazine here, it's got a little section, Who is Deborah Sampson? And it's got the whole little story about who she was. And also they're saying a high American Legion priority is implementation, oversight, and progress in the area of VA women's health care. This is huge. Here's the VFW. I'm also a member of the VFW. They're also talking about this legislation. And that's where I found out about Resolution 50. And I also found out today, one of our allies here, Lindsay Church, who's advocating for the VA to change their motto, which is to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his widow and his orphan. Come on, you know, get hip. That definitely needs an update to be a lot more inclusive. So we're going in the right direction. I promised that we were going to talk about the transgender service ban ending in the military. It ended in 2021. Obama was the first president to end the ban in 2016. The previous administration enacted it again in 2019. But on January 25th, 2021, the Biden-Harris administration again revoked the ban, giving soldiers who are transgender an opportunity to dedicate their hearts and souls to the country and get the same respect that other service members are getting. And SAGEvets, we are very excited to report that we had our very first transgender veteran nominated and inducted into the New York State Senate Veterans Hall of Fame by her Senator Brad Hoylman. Renee Imperato is the very first one ever inducted. And she says that she was radicalized by her service in Vietnam. She has a rich history as an advocate for veterans' healthcare, transgender rights, and the Black Lives Matter movement. So yes, and to talk about the new secretary, he's working really hard with the VA to meet these needs that come along with changing in policy. And also, speaking of first, to piggyback on what Annette was saying earlier, the Biden-Harris administration also nominated Dr. Rachel Levine, formerly Pennsylvania's top health official, as the nation's Assistant Secretary of Health. And she is the very first openly transgender federal official confirmed by the Senate. So we're going in the right direction here. And I'm sure there are questions. We've gone a little over, but we have 4 minutes left. I haven't seen any questions in the chat, but I do want to just put it out there if anybody's got any questions. Otherwise, we're just going to have our closing comments here. I cannot thank everybody enough. I do have to do the raffle too. I've got my little hat here and I'm going to pull a number out and see what number I've got. Number 8. Okay, number 8. So I will look onto our database of people who signed up, and the 8th person will be the winner of the $25 Starbucks card. I know that's why everybody's here with us tonight. But big thanks to the National Association of Black Military Women, New York State Division of Veteran Services, and in particular, retired specialist Catherine Laporte, President Patricia Jackson-Kelley, Shawanna Boyd, our SAGEcare manager, and Colonel Stephanie Dawson, retired Colonel Carol St. Pierre, retired Colonel Dr. Annette Tucker Osborne, and Kristen Rouse. So please, I know that the people want to have an opportunity to say final words here. So the floor is yours. All right, well, we've gone over. You are a wonderful people. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be working with you, advocating for veterans throughout the city of New York, throughout the state of New York, throughout our country. We will keep these conversations going to try to make sure everybody's getting an equal shot, an equal opportunity. So thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.